Have you ever driven along behind a vehicle and thought to yourself, who on earth is behind the wheel? You've been driving behind a car and you thought, I wonder who's driving that. I mean, most of the time it's probably not something you think about. But what about maybe if you're following along behind a car or a truck or something, and it's like doing sort of erratic changes in speed, speeding up, slowing down, maybe, for no apparent reason. This doesn't, like, you think, why did they do that? Maybe they veer all over the road. They drift over the centre line 1 minute, the next minute they're practically in the gutter. What would you think about that vehicle? You'd probably be thinking, well, who's driving? Who's behind the wheel of that vehicle? Or what you might really think is you think, what are they thinking? What's going on in the mind of the person who's behind the wheel of that vehicle? You might come to the conclusion, you might think, they've been drinking, or they're on drugs, or there's something strange that's going on, and so you might keep a sort of a following distance. You'd like to stay well back from them, to sort of keep out of trouble. I mean, if it was bad enough, you might even think, I better dial whatever it is, star 555 or whatever, and let someone know so someone can intervene, because this is like an accident waiting to happen. Now, I remember when I was younger, I saw a TV program or movie. In fact, there's probably more than one TV program or movie where there was like maybe someone unconscious at the wheel of a vehicle, and someone had to sort of like get on board this moving vehicle and take control in order to prevent disaster from happening. Okay, and so the title of the sermon this morning is actually called The Steering Wheel of Life. The steering wheel of life. Just picture that. Picture a vehicle going along, and if it's not being steered properly, what's going to happen to that vehicle? Now you might say, well, hang on a second, my life doesn't have a steering wheel. My life doesn't have a steering wheel, but the truth is that it does. And we started there in Isaiah chapter number 55. Look at verse number 7. Isaiah chapter 55, look at verse number 7. Isaiah 55:7 says, "Let the wicked forsake his way, and the unrighteous man his thoughts, and let him return unto the Lord, and he will have mercy upon him, and to our God, for he will abundantly pardon." So notice what it says here. It says, this wicked person, they have a way. And when it talks about your way, that's talking about your actions. It's talking about what you do. Okay? So this wicked person, God's saying, forsake your way. And he's also telling the unrighteous man that he should forsake his thoughts. So the wicked man's got a way he should forsake. The unrighteous man has got thoughts that he should forsake. But the thing we need to realise is that the wicked man and the unrighteous man, in this verse, it's the same person. The wicked person, the unrighteous person, it's the same person. Look, if you would, at Exodus chapter number 23. Keep your finger on Isaiah 55. Look at Exodus chapter number 23 and verse number 1. Exodus chapter number 23 and verse number 1. Oops, that's 32, not 23. Exodus chapter 23 and verse number 1. It says, "Thou shalt not raise a false report, and put not thine hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness." Notice it says, "Thou shalt not raise a false report." So it's saying don't say things that aren't true, reporting something when it's not actually true. But it says, look, put not thine hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness. It's saying, look, if you're an unrighteous witness, what are you? You're wicked. You're joining with the wicked, because that's what they would do. So we see wickedness and unrighteousness. Look at Psalm 71. Look at Psalm 71 and verse number 4. Psalm 71 and verse number 4. Psalm 71 verse 4 says, "Deliver me, O my God, out of the hand of the wicked, out of the hand of the unrighteous and cruel man." He says, look, deliver me out of the hand of the wicked, out of the hand of the unrighteous and cruel man. So the unrighteous and cruel man is the same as the wicked man. Because if you're in the hand of one, you're in the hand of the other, because it's the same. The wicked person is the unrighteous person. And what we see back in Isaiah chapter 55, God is telling this wicked, this unrighteous person to forsake his way and his thoughts. Because you see, there's a very big connection between your thoughts and your actions. Okay? Turn if you were to Genesis chapter number 6. Genesis chapter number 6. Genesis chapter number 6. You see, your thoughts direct your actions. It's kind of like a steering wheel directs a car. In fact, I think it talks about that in James, actually. It talks about, the whole of the ships which though they be so great and are driven of fierce winds, yet are they turned about with a very small helm, whithersoever the governor listeth. And it's talking about how a great big ship someone steers that ship. They've got a little rudder. They turn the whatever the name of the what do you call that thing? That wheel that they turn on the ship, whatever it is. It's not a steering wheel, but it's probably
The stern?
I don't know, whatever it is. Maybe it's the helm. Yeah, must be. And so they turn that around, and that makes the rudder go, and then the ship goes in a different direction. Even though the ship is massive, but it's a little thing. And obviously in James 3, that's talking about the tongue. About the tongue as a little member, and it directs the course of your life. Okay, but so you're there in Genesis chapter number 6, and what we're looking at here is the fact is what we think. It directs our life in the same way that a steering wheel controls a car. Look at Genesis chapter 6, verse number 5. Genesis chapter 6 and verse number 5. It says, "And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually." Notice that. So what we can see is that, they're filled with wickedness, but they're also with evil thoughts. Notice the wickedness of man was great, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart. So he's thinking, his imagination, he's having these thoughts that are evil, and yet we see that he's got wicked actions. That's what's going on. In fact, if we read later on in the chapter, it says the earth was filled with violence. The earth was filled with violence. So the people were wicked, they had evil thoughts, and the earth was filled with violence because of that. Do you think there's a connection with the thoughts that people were thinking? Do you think people might have been filled with, with hatred, filled with anger, and that would be what would have led to the violence? That would kind of make sense, wouldn't it? People aren't just going to do violent things just for no reason. If they're thinking wicked things, if they're thinking, if they're filled with hatred and anger, that would lead to the violence. In fact, we can see that just earlier on in Genesis. Good example. Let's look at Genesis chapter number 4. Genesis chapter number 4 and verse number 5. We see it played out really well here. Genesis chapter 4, verse number 5. It says, "But unto Cain and to his offering he had not respect." And obviously this is going back. Remember Cain and Abel? Remember Adam and Eve? They've got, Cain and Abel, 2 sons there. And they both bring an offering. Abel brings the offering that God had required, the blood sacrifice, the lamb, whereas Cain just brings the fruit of the ground. And God doesn't have respect for Cain's offering. It says, "But unto Cain and to his offering he had not respect. And Cain was very wroth." What does that mean? He was angry. He was very wroth. And his countenance fell. So notice, Cain got angry, and then what happened? His countenance fell. His face changed. You saw it on his face that he was angry. So first he got angry, then his countenance fell. And the Lord said unto Cain, "Why art thou wroth?" He says, "Why are you angry for? And why is thy countenance fallen? If thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted? And if thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door, and unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him." So he's warning. See, look, why is it that you're upset about this? Why are you upset about this? He says, if you do what's right, there's not going to be a problem. But he says, look, sin lieth at the door. What he's saying, you're having these evil thoughts, these angry thoughts. I can see it on your face, and look out, because sin is waiting to get you. And lo and behold, we keep reading, verse number 8, "And Cain talked with his brother Abel, and it came to pass when they were in the field that Cain rose up against Abel his brother and slew him." So he got angry, his countenance falls, next thing you know, he's committing murder. He's killing his brother. Okay? And so what we can see is he had these angry thoughts, and it led to him carrying out this violent act. Now, I know someone who recently came across a person who had taken their own life. And that's obviously a very sad situation. It's a very sad situation, especially when it's a young person. And even though I don't know the person at all, I've never met the person or knew anything about them whatsoever, I can tell you something about them for sure. And that is that they were thinking some pretty bad thoughts. They were thinking some pretty bad thoughts. Because an action like, taking your own life, that doesn't just come out of nowhere. Someone just doesn't randomly take their life, It's preceded by thoughts. There could be thoughts of hopelessness, could be hopes of despair, maybe it could be anger, could be frustration, could be jealousy, could be revenge. But it's kind of not the thoughts that we were singing about before in Philippians 4, is it? It's not those thoughts. It's different than that. Okay? And so if you think about it, when someone's reached the point where they're prepared to take their own life, do you think, are they filled with thoughts of gratefulness, gratitude? Would they be filled with thoughts of peace? Would they be filled with thoughts of contentment or thankfulness? Do you think this is what someone's thinking, and then they kill themselves? No, everyone knows that's not the case. We know that's not the case. I mean, someone who's on the verge of suicide, they're like a car that's gone off the road. It's plunging towards a cliff. Well, what needs to happen to that car? Someone needs to take the steering wheel. Take hold of the steering wheel and turn it into a different direction. Turn back to Isaiah chapter number 55. Isaiah chapter 55 and verse number 7. What do we start with? It said, let the wicked forsake his way, and the unrighteous man his thoughts. And let him return unto the Lord, and he will have mercy upon him, and to our God, for he will abundantly pardon. So look, he needs to forsake their way, forsake their thoughts. In order to change your way, you're going to have to change your thoughts. If you want to forsake your wicked way, you've got to forsake your wicked thoughts. Look at verse number 8. It says, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. Now these verses are often people used to say, well, we don't think like God, because his thoughts are so much greater than us. And that's true. But it kind of misses the point. You see, the point of it is to say that we should think like God thinks. That's the point of it, to say, my thoughts are not your thoughts. It's like, well, hang on, he's just finished saying that the unrighteous man should forsake his thoughts. So instead he should be actually thinking like me. I mean, if you look back at, that's what it says here, forsake your thoughts. Look back at verse number 6. It says, look, seek ye the Lord while he may be found. Call upon him while he is near. We should seek the Lord. Well, how are we going to seek the Lord? How do we seek the Lord? Look at Psalm 40. Keep your finger in Isaiah 55, but look at Psalm 40 and verse number 7. Psalm 40 and verse number 7. Psalm 40 and verse number 7. It says, then said I, lo, I come, in the volume of the book it is written of me. Notice, I come, whereabouts? In the book. I come in the book, it is written of me. Look at verse number 8. I delight to do thy will, O my God. Yea, thy law is within my heart. So look, I delight to do what you want me to do. In other words, I'm going to do what God wants. But it says, look, thy law is within my heart. So what's in his heart? God's law. So what's he thinking? He's thinking God's thoughts. So he's put God's thoughts into his heart, and that's the thing that's leading him to go the right way. He delights to do as well. We often sing Romans chapter number 12. Romans chapter number 12. And it says in Romans chapter number 12, verse number 2, it says, and be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed. That means transformed, what does that mean? That means changed. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. So that's talking about our thoughts changing and lining up with God's thoughts. Look at 2 Corinthians chapter number 10. 2 Corinthians chapter number 10. 2 Corinthians chapter number 10 and verse number 5. 2 Corinthians chapter number 10 and verse number 5. I should maybe start back in verse number 3. It says, look, for though we walk in the flesh, we do not war after the flesh. So notice this. It's like, we've got a battle that we're in, but it's not a fleshly battle. It says, verse 4, for the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. Verse number 5, casting down imaginations. What's an imagination? It's something you think. Casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalteth itself against the knowledge of God. And it says, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. Casting down imaginations, and bring into captivity every thought. So what you think is important. Because, make no mistake about this, the thoughts you think will have an incredible impact on your life. That young person who took their life, the thoughts that they were thinking, guess what? It led to them ending their own life. Turn if you to Mark chapter number 7. Mark chapter number 7. Mark chapter 7 and verse number 14. Mark chapter number 7 and verse number 14. Mark chapter 7, verse number 14. Mark 7:14, it says, and when he had called all the people unto him, he said unto them, hearken unto me, every one of you, and understand. Saying, look, listen to me, and understand. There is nothing from without a man that entering into him can defile him, but the things which come out of him, those are they that defile the man. If any man have ears to hear, let him hear. And when he was entered into the house from the people, his disciples asked him concerning the parable. And he said unto them, Are ye so without understanding also? Do ye not perceive that whatsoever thing from without entereth into the man, it cannot defile him? Because it entereth not into his heart, but into the belly, and goeth out into the draught, purging all meats. And he said, That which cometh out of the man, that defileth the man. For from within, out of the heart of men, proceed evil thoughts, adulteries, fornications, murders, thefts, covetousness, wickedness, deceit, lasciviousness, an evil eye, blasphemy, pride, foolishness. All these things come from within and defile the man. So notice saying, it's not, because what they were questioning with before, they were basically sort of saying, they were talking about the food that you eat, and then they were talking about, and people eating with unwashed hands and stuff like that, and they were finding fault. And he's saying, you don't understand. It's not, it's not the stuff that you eat. That's not what's going to affect you. Okay? And he says, look, it's the stuff that's on the inside, what comes from within. But notice what it starts with. He says, For from within, out of the heart of men. What's your heart? I mean, the heart is used in the Bible interchangeably with your mind. Okay? So what comes out of your heart, he says, look, evil thoughts. Starts with evil thoughts, and then it leads to all these evil actions, adulteries, fornications, murders, all these different things. Okay? And Jesus says that we should be more concerned with the internal rather than the external. Because what's in your heart, what's in your mind, that's going to produce things in your life. Look down at, this was said in verse number 21, look, from within, out of the heart of men, proceed evil thoughts, adulteries, fornications, murders, thefts, covetousness, wickedness, deceit, lasciviousness, an evil eye, blasphemy, pride, foolishness. Now, is Jesus just saying, look, our hearts are wicked and there's nothing we can do about it? Well, it's true, the Bible does say, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who cannot? That's true. But at the same time, look at Luke chapter number 6. Look at Luke chapter number 6 and verse number 45. Luke chapter number 6. Luke chapter 6 and verse number 45. Look what Jesus says here. Luke chapter 6 and verse number 45. He says, A good man out of the good treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is good. And an evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is evil. For of the abundance of the heart his mouth speaketh. Notice that. So he's saying, look, a good man, he's got good things, good treasure stored in his heart. But an evil man has got evil treasure stored in his heart. And guess what? Out of the heart, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. So what's in the heart is going to come out of the mouth. And so the fact is, no one's completely good. We're all sinners. We know that. There's none righteous, no, not one. But it's true that we can actually, to some degree, purify ourselves. We can purify ourselves. Not in the sense of earning salvation or anything like that. But in seeking to please God, we should purify ourselves. Look at 1 John chapter number 3. 1 John, towards the back of your Bibles, 1 John chapter number 3 and verse number 1. 1 John chapter number 3 and verse number 1. Page 1230. 1 John chapter 3, verse number 1 says, Behold, what manner of love the Father hath bestowed upon us, that we should be called the sons of God. Therefore the world knoweth us not, because it knew him not. Beloved, now are we the sons of God, and it doth not yet appear what we shall be, but we know that when he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. Look at verse 3. And every man that hath this hope in him purifieth himself, even as he is pure. In other words, we've got this hope that we're going to see Jesus, and we're going to be like him, because we'll see him as he is. And if you've got that hope, if that's the hope that's in your mind, what should you be doing? Purifying yourself. Why? Because Jesus is pure, and we should want to be like Jesus. Look at James chapter number 4. James chapter number 4 and verse number 8. James chapter number 4. James chapter number 4 and verse number 8. He says, Draw nigh to God, and he will draw nigh to you. Remember we saw back in Isaiah 55, it talked about seeking the Lord while he may be found. Draw nigh to God, and he will draw nigh to you. Cleanse your hands, ye sinners. And what's this say? And purify your hearts, ye double-minded. Purify your hearts. He's saying, James is telling, look, purify your hearts. Turn if you're to Proverbs chapter number 15. Proverbs chapter number 15. Proverbs chapter number 15 and verse number 26. Proverbs chapter number 15. Proverbs chapter number 15 and verse number 26. Proverbs 15:26 says, The thoughts of the wicked are an abomination to the Lord, but the words of the pure are pleasant words. Notice that. The thoughts of the wicked, what the wicked is thinking, that's an abomination to God. God hates it, what the wicked is thinking. But it says, but the words of the pure are pleasant words. So are there, it's contrasting people who are wicked and people that are pure. One of them is looking at their thoughts, but the other one is looking at their words. But of course we know, didn't we see before, out of the abundance of the heart, his mouth speaketh. What's in your heart, what you're thinking, it's going to come out of your mouth. Look at Proverbs chapter number 12. Proverbs chapter number 12 and verse number 5. Proverbs chapter number 12 and verse number 5. It says, the thoughts of the righteous are right, but the counsels of the wicked are deceit. The thoughts of the righteous are right. But guess what? People who are saved, they're righteous. But we should be thinking righteous thoughts. We should be thinking right thoughts. Because the reason for this is your thoughts are going to produce a result in your life. They're going to produce a result in your life. Is it going to be good? Or is it going to be bad? Just like bad steering can plunge a vehicle off a cliff. Good steering can turn a vehicle in the right direction. Look at Proverbs chapter number 4. Proverbs chapter number 4 and verse number 25. Proverbs chapter number 4 and verse number 25. It says, let thine eyes look right on, and let thine eyelids look straight before thee. Ponder the path of thy feet. That means think about where it is that you're going. It'd be like the same sort of thing. Think about where it is that you're steering the vehicle. He says, look, ponder the path of thy feet, and let all thy ways be established. So you think first, ponder where you're going, and let thy ways be established. Turn not to the right hand, nor to the left. Remove thy foot from evil. Look back at Proverbs chapter number 3. Proverbs chapter number 3, verse number 19. Proverbs 3:19 says, the Lord by wisdom hath founded the earth. By understanding hath he established the heavens. By his knowledge the depths are broken up, and the clouds drop down the dew. My son, let not them depart from thine eyes. Keep sound wisdom and discretion. So shall I be life unto thy soul, and grace to thy neck. Then shalt thou walk in thy way safely, and thy foot shall not stumble. You're going to walk in the right way. You're not going to trip. You're not going to stumble. You're not going to drive off a cliff. But it starts with wisdom. With wisdom, that's what we need to have. We need to have God's wisdom. We need to be thinking his thoughts. Look back at verse number 1. Verse number 1, it says, look, my son, forget not my law, but let thine heart keep my commandments. What's that talking about? Your heart, that's your mind. So our mind should be filled with God's commandments. He says, look, for length of days and long life and peace shall I add to thee. That's the opposite of plunging over a cliff, isn't it? Length of days and long life and peace shall I add to thee. Actually, turn if you to Philippians chapter number 4. Philippians chapter number 4. Philippians chapter number 4. We were saying before, while you're turning there, I'll read to you Isaiah 26. Verse number 3 says, thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee, because he trusteth in thee. You want peace? Then your mind needs to be on God. You need to be thinking God's thoughts. Philippians chapter number 4, look at, maybe start verse number 4. Philippians chapter 4, verse number 4 says, rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say, rejoice. That's talking about being joyful, being thankful, being grateful. Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. Let your moderation be known unto all men. The Lord is at hand. Moderation, that's when you're controlled. Self-control. Let your moderation be known unto all men. The Lord is at hand. Be careful for nothing. That means don't be filled with care. Don't be worrying. Don't be anxious. Don't be filled with anxiety. Be careful for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication, look at this, with thanksgiving. Being thankful. With thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God. Verse number 7. And the peace of God, which passeth all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. So God's peace, what's it going to do? It's going to keep your heart. It's going to keep your mind. It's going to protect it. And then verse number 8, as we were saying this before. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, what does he say? Think on these things. So that means that's what our thoughts are supposed to be like. Our thoughts are supposed to be true. They're supposed to be honest. They're supposed to be just. They're supposed to be pure. They're supposed to be lovely. They're supposed to be things that are of good report. That's what we're supposed to be thinking these right thoughts. And when we do that, what's going to happen? God's going to keep us. We're going to know God's peace. I mean, You say, well, why should we be thinking these sort of thoughts? I mean, just firstly, we should be thinking these thoughts because God said to. He said, look, think those thoughts. But not only that, it will produce a very different result in our lives. Because what you think, even the world will tell you that. You can look at, secular writings. Look at someone like, who's I reading about the other day? Henry Ford. The famous quote from Henry, everyone know who Henry Ford is, Model T, invented that. Well, Henry Ford, he said, if you think you can, or if you think you can't, you're right. That's what he said. If you think you can, or if you think you can't, you're right. Which, in other words, whichever one it is, if you think you can't, guess what? You can't. If you think you can, guess what? You can. And obviously, people can take that to an extreme. But the fact is, your thoughts, that has a big impact. Okay? Look at Jeremiah chapter number 6. Jeremiah chapter number 6. So just after Isaiah, got the book of Jeremiah chapter number 6. And look at verse number 19. Jeremiah chapter number 6. And verse number 19. It says, Hear, O earth, behold, I will bring evil upon this people, even the fruit of their thoughts, because they have not hearkened unto my words, nor to my law, but rejected it. So notice what God's saying here. Thoughts bear fruit. Thoughts bear fruit. You think of planting a seed in the ground and it's going to grow into some plant and bear fruit. Well, guess what? He says, look, I'm going to bring upon you, and he's talking to Jerusalem here, he's saying, look, I'm going to bring upon you the fruit of your thoughts. Those thoughts you've been thinking, guess what? That's going to bear fruit. There's an old saying, sow a thought, reap an action. Sow an action, reap a habit. Sow a habit, reap a destiny. Now, I'm actually going to be preaching on habits tonight, but notice the first part. It says, sow a thought, reap an action. God is telling the people of Jerusalem they're going to reap the fruit of their thoughts. They had rejected God's law. They had broken his commandments. But where did it start? It started in their thoughts. Look back at Jeremiah chapter number 4. Jeremiah chapter number 4 and verse number 14. Jeremiah chapter number 4 and verse number 14. It says, O Jerusalem, wash thine heart from wickedness, that thou mayest be saved. How long shall vain thoughts lodge within thee? What's he saying? These thoughts within you, they're vain. Wash your heart from wickedness. And so, it's important we need to understand the thoughts of your heart. That's the problem. What you're thinking about. Well, if the problem is the thoughts of the heart, what can be done about it? What can we do about it? Turn to the book of Psalms. Psalm 119. Psalm 119, largest chapter in the Bible. Psalm 119, look at verse number 9. Psalm 119 and verse number 9. It says, Wherewithal shall a young man cleanse his way? Sounds a bit like purifying yourself, doesn't it? Wherewithal shall a young man cleanse his way? By taking heed thereto according to thy word. With my whole heart have I sought thee. O let me not wander from thy commandments. Verse number 11, thy word have I hid in mine heart, that I might not sin against thee. So what's gone into his heart? What's gone into his mind? God's word. Look back at Proverbs chapter number 4. Proverbs chapter number 4 and verse number 20. Proverbs chapter number 4 and verse number 20. It says, My son, attend to my words, incline thine ear unto my sayings. Let them not depart from thine eyes, keep them in the midst of thine heart. So notice, it's something you need to listen to, it's something you need to look at, and you need to put it into your heart. For they are life unto those that find them, and health to all their flesh. Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. Put away from their froward mouth, and perverse lips put far from thee. He's saying, look, you need to put these things, need to go into your eyes, need to go into your ears, and he says, keep these other things away. Because what? It's their life to those that find them. I mean, in contrast to that, I think it talks about in Proverbs chapter number 8, it talks about wisdom. You need to listen to wisdom and hear instruction, be wise, refuse it not. Blessed is the man that heareth me, watching daily at my gates, waiting at the posts of my doors. For whoso findeth me findeth life, and shall obtain favour of the Lord. But he that sinneth against me wrongeth his own soul. All they that hate me love death. People who hate wisdom, who hate God's word, guess what? You love death. And that's, you bear the fruit. The fruit of your thoughts. Look at Psalm 19. Psalm 19 in verse number 14. Psalm 19 and verse number 14. Psalm 19 and verse number 14. He says, "Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer." Notice that. The words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart. It's not just the meditation of the heart, the thoughts. It's also the words. Because, of course, they're connected. You see, what you think about, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. It's going to come out of the mouth. What you say and what you do is a reflection of your thoughts. We looked at Philippians chapter 4 before. I should have said to keep your finger there. Turn back there now. Look at Philippians chapter 4. We saw verse number 8, which said, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. But then, look what it says in verse number 9. Verse number 9, it says, "Those things which you've both learned and received and heard and seen in me, do. And the God of peace shall be with you." So you say, look, think these thoughts. Think what's right. Think. But then, the things I've been telling you, also do. So think and also do. So what he's saying to change what we think about, we need to change what we do. To change what we do, we need to change what we think about. You see, those two things, it's like a cycle. Like your thoughts produce emotions, which produce actions, and your actions influence your thoughts and your emotions. It's like a cycle going round and round. Look if you would at look at Proverbs chapter number 16. Proverbs chapter number 16. Proverbs chapter number 16 and verse number 3. Proverbs chapter 16, verse number 3. It says, "Commit thy works unto the Lord, and thy thoughts shall be established." Notice that. Commit thy works. In other words, decide you're going to do what God wants to do. Commit your works to the Lord, and your thoughts shall be established. So when you do what's right, that's going to help your thoughts. So it goes both ways. It's like a cycle. I think there's various scientific studies that we've done, and they call it bidirectional. It's just a tricky way of saying the same thing. It's basically what you think, what you feel, and your actions. They each influence each other. And without getting into sort of like scientific studies and stuff like that, they've talked about how different hormones and things are affected by what you think. That actually alters the hormones that your body produces. Things like adrenaline and cortisol and all sorts of different things. That actually has a physical, measurable effect by what you're thinking about and also what actions you can do. And the thing is, you can, by taking action, you can alter the way you think and the way you perceive. I mean, I was just thinking about this morning. Actually, I was just earlier on, I was having a cold shower. Most days I have a cold shower, and one of the things about when you have a cold shower is it's like naturally your body, it's not terribly keen on having a cold shower. And one of the reasons I started having a cold shower was because it's kind of like it helps with recovery. It aids recovery of the body, and when you've been playing squash and stuff like that, it kind of helps you recover. And so that was how I started doing it. So I'd start having a cold shower, and I'd normally just, particularly the legs, because that's the thing that gets sorest when you're playing squash generally. And so put one leg under the cold water, and I mean it's cold, but I kind of just did this sort of unconsciously, really. I'd do one leg and that's all fine, and before I do the other one, because part of your mind's thinking you don't want to do this. You don't want to put your leg in the cold water. And so for some reason, I just started, each time I do it, I'd go, yeah. Now, normally, if you say, yeah, it's like, that's a good thing. Something exciting happens, something good, something you're happy about. You go, yeah. And I don't know why. It wasn't something I consciously thought, but I just started. Each time, as I went to put my leg in the cold water, I'd say, yeah. And so, at the same time, thinking this positive, this is a good thing, at the same time as doing things that my body really didn't really want to do. And it's like it overrides it. And so just before and that's like, it's like when you're in the cold, then it's all fine, and you just get used to it. But it's just a funny thing how what you actually do, just by saying that, and I say that, people probably hear me and think I'm nutty or whatever, but that's the thing, And the thing is, they've done all sorts of studies and stuff, and as I said, you can take a lot of these things with a grain of salt. Scientific studies, they talk about, the replication crisis. that all these people have proved that these things happen, but then when we go back and try and do it again, it doesn't actually come through. But the fact is, you don't need to go to the science. See, because if you go to the science, science will tell you spanking your children's bad for them. Isn't that what it'll tell you? And yet people who bring their children up well and discipline them, guess what? Their children are much better behaved. They're much happier than miserable little brats who never get any discipline from their parents. They're miserable. Now, sure, is it a case that there are people who get physically assaulted and beaten by their parents and that has scarring effect on them? Yes, that is true as well. Okay? That is true. But of course, and that's one of the reasons why the scientific studies all say that spanking's bad for your kids. Because what they do is they lump in the actual genuine child abuse with just the, smack on the backside because they're naughty, and skews your results and whatever. But here's the thing. We can just test. We don't need to go to some science book. We don't need to go to some study. We can test and observe it in our own lives. And I remember years ago, I had a karate instructor, and he got us to do this experiment. And he got us all to line up, because you do all these various exercises, you're walking backwards and forwards and doing different stuff, and he got us all to line up at one side of the dojo, and he got us to walk across. He says, what I want you to do is I want you to put your head down, put like your chin on your chest. So you're down, leaning forward, and I want you to walk across the room with your head down, your eyes down, thinking really positive, uplifting thoughts. And we tried doing it. And it's quite strange, because when you put your chin down and your eyes down and you're that sort of pose, you don't normally think positive, uplifting thoughts. It's kind of the opposite. You kind of think down, depressed, negative type thoughts. And then we did that walking one way, and then when we walked back the other way, he got us to do the opposite. Lift your chin up, chest up, shoulders back, a good posture, and think really negative, sad, depressing thoughts. And it's kind of the opposite. Because normally, that's the sort of thoughts that you think when your head's down, not the other way around. And so there's a connection between what you do physically with your body and the thoughts that you think. And so when you control what you do, it's going to affect you. And I mean, you've probably seen people playing sport. You ever seen people playing sport? And you ever seen, what's the expression they say about someone? His head's down. You've noticed it. You've been watching someone play squash, and you see the part of that, and it's like you can see their head drops. What's happened? You know that on the inside they're feeling depressed. They're going down. I can't win. I don't know what to do. Things are going bad. That's what happens. Okay? And so what you put in your mind is going to have a big effect on what you think. It's going to have a big effect. I mean, the things that go into your mind, that's why I talked about, remember putting thy word I hid in my heart, that might not sin against thee. The books that you read are going to affect the way you think. And the way that you think is going to affect the fruit of your life, what goes on in your life. I mean, obviously the most important book that you could read would be what? The Bible. Reading the Bible. What about this? The things that you watch. The things that you put in front of your eyes. The things that you put in front of your eyes, it's going to have a massive effect on what you think. A massive effect on what you think. The music you listen to. The music you listen to. Music can affect emotion, can't it? You ever listen to, I don't know, been to a funeral or something, and it's like, you're sitting there thinking, oh, that's right, I'm going to be stern, I'm not going to be emotional at the funeral, but then they start playing music, and it's like, oh. Why? Because music affects your emotions. What you listen to, what you see. The people that you hang around with. And obviously, the reason for that is because the people you hang around with, they say and do things. And those saying, you hear what they say. They're speaking things into your life. It says in 1 Corinthians chapter number... Actually, look at 1 Corinthians chapter number 15. 1 Corinthians chapter number 15 and verse number 33. 1 Corinthians chapter number 15 and verse number 33, says, be not deceived, evil communications corrupt good manners. Notice that. Evil communications. People who are saying things that are wrong. People that are doing things that are wrong. Being around the wrong people. What's it talk about that in Proverbs, doesn't it? Proverbs chapter number 13. Proverbs 13:20 says, he that walketh with wise men shall be wise. The companion of fools shall be destroyed. Walking with the wise, you'll be wise. Being with fools, it's going to affect you. Turn back to Isaiah 55. Back to Isaiah 55. We'll finish up. Isaiah chapter number 55. Isaiah chapter number 55. See, we need to realise that what we think is important. What we think is very, very important. We sang 1 Peter 1 before. And she was a great verse. Keep your finger in Isaiah 55 if you've made it there. But look at also at 1 Peter chapter number 1. Look at verse number 13. 1 Peter 1 verse number 13. It says, wherefore gird up the loins of your mind. Gird up the loins of your mind. Be sober and hope to the end for the graces to be brought unto you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. He says, gird up the loins of your mind. And that's talking about girding up. It's like sort of like putting a belt around something. It's like tightening something up. Girding up the loins of your mind, be sober and hope. So saying you should be sober and you should hope. In other words, get control of your mind. Control what it is that you're thinking about. Control what it is you're thinking. I mean, Paul says the same thing in Titus. He says, the young men likewise exhort to be sober-minded. Tell them they've got to be sober-minded. What are they thinking about? And then it says, in all things showing thyself a pattern of good works. Why did he say that? Because when you are sober-minded, when you control what you're thinking, guess what? That's going to control your actions. That's going to control the works that you do. You know, guaranteed when someone goes off and starts doing things that they shouldn't be doing, way before that, they were thinking things they shouldn't be thinking. You know, the fruit of their thoughts. That's what God says. Sorry, back in Isaiah 55, as we finish up, Isaiah 55, look at verse number 6. He says, look, seek the Lord while he may be found. Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call ye upon him while he is near. What do we read in James 4:8? It says, cleanse your hands, ye sinners, and purify your hearts, ye double-minded. Draw nigh to God, and he will draw nigh to you. Well, look, seek God while he may be found. Call upon him while he is near. You know, draw near to him. How are you going to do it? Cleanse your hands. That's what you're doing. And purify your hearts. That's what you're thinking. Those two go together. Verse number 7. Let the wicked forsake his way, and the unrighteous man his thoughts. And let him return unto the Lord, and he will have mercy upon him, and to our God, for he will abundantly pardon. Let the wicked forsake his way. His way and his thoughts, they go together. Verse number 8. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. God's thoughts and his ways are much greater than ours, but if we hide his word in our heart and take heed unto it, we can be cleansed. You know, we can be cleansed. It says in Psalm 119, keep your finger in Isaiah 55, but in Psalm 119, verse number 32, it says, I will run the way of thy commandments when thou shalt enlarge mine heart. I don't think that was actually a verse I was thinking about, but that's all right. Verse number 10, back in Isaiah 55. Isaiah 55, verse number 10, it says, for as the rain cometh down and the snow from heaven, and returneth not thither, but watereth the earth, and maketh it bring forth and bud, that it may give seed to the sower, and bread to the eater, so shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in the thing whereto I send it. So just like the rain comes from heaven, causes things to grow, so will God's word. It will accomplish the purpose he has for it. It will cause you to grow. God's word will cause you to grow. 1 Peter 2:2, as newborn babes desire the sincere milk of the word, that ye may grow thereby. Look at the end result. We'll see in verse number 12. It says, look, for ye shall go out with joy, and be led forth with peace. The mountains and the hills shall break forth before you into singing, and all the trees of the field shall clap their hands. Instead of the thorn shall come up the fir tree, and instead of the briar shall come up the myrtle tree. And that shall be to the Lord for a name, for an everlasting sign that shall not be cut off. That's the end result. Look, joy, peace, singing, a flourishing tree instead of a prickly bush. Last place we'll turn is Proverbs chapter number 3. Proverbs chapter number 3. Proverbs chapter number 3. Proverbs chapter number 3. The title of the sermon this morning is the steering wheel of life. The steering wheel of life. What's the thing that's steering you? What's the thing that's directing you? It's your mind. It's your thoughts. Take control of your thoughts. Like in Proverbs chapter number 3, verse number 1, it says, "My son, forget not my law, but let thine heart keep my commandments." That's your mind. "Let thine heart keep my commandments, for length of days and long life and peace shall I add to thee. Let not mercy and truth forsake thee. Bind them about thy neck, write them upon the table of thine heart. So shalt thou find favour and good understanding in the sight of God and man." Look down at verse number 7. It says, "Be not wise in thine own eyes, fear the Lord, and depart from evil." Notice that. Fear the Lord and depart from evil. What's fear? That's a thought. Fear the Lord, depart from evil. That's an action. Look down at verse number 13. It says, look, "Happy is the man that findeth wisdom, and the man that getteth understanding. For the merchandise of it is better than the merchandise of silver, and the gain thereof than fine gold. She is more precious than rubies. And all the things thou canst desire are not to be compared unto her." Notice, it's treasure. It's treasure. The wisdom that God's offering, it's like a treasure. Well, isn't that what we're supposed to hide in our hearts? Yeah, a good man out of the good treasure brings forth that which is good. Look at verse number 18. "She is a tree of life to them that lay hold upon her, and happy is everyone that retaineth her." It leads to happiness. "The Lord by wisdom hath founded the earth, by understanding hath established the heavens. By his knowledge the depths are broken up, and the clouds drop down the dew. My son, let not them depart from thine eyes. Keep sound wisdom and discretion. So shall I be life unto thy soul, and grace to thy neck. Then shall thou walk on thy way safe, and thy foot shall not stumble. When thou liest down, thou shalt not be afraid. Yea, thou shalt lie down, and thy sleep shall be sweet." It's just so many great blessings. Look down at verse number 35. He says, look, "The wise shall inherit glory, but shame shall be the promotion of fools." You see, if you're wise, you'll use the steering wheel. You'll turn it in the right direction. Just like the man with the ship in James chapter 3. Not that we ever turned there. But look, he turns it. Control your mind. Think God's thoughts. How do you think God's thoughts? "Thy word have I hid in mine heart." Let's pray. Gracious Lord, we thank you for your word. And Lord, I just ask you to give each one of us your mind. In fact, Lord, your word tells us actually that we have the mind of Christ. We have the mind of Christ. But we've got it right here in the volume of the book. It's written of you, Lord. Lord, please help us to desire your word. Lord, help us to be like the psalmist. "Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stand in the way of sinners, nor sit in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord. And in his law doth he meditate day and night. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper." Help us to be like that, Lord. Help us to desire your word, to love your word, and that we would flourish, that we would bring forth fruit, that the fruit of our thoughts would be good fruit, not bad fruit. We thank you and praise you and love you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.